Welcome to the Workflow Podcast. Many, many moons ago, the Roman philosopher and statesman Seneca said that life is not short if you know how to use it. He added that people are frugal with their money, but not so their time, which is the one thing it is right to be stingy with, because time, unlike money, cannot be earned back once you've spent it. He was right. We waste so much of our time at work, to the detriment of our professional goals, our health, our personal relationships, and our experience of life. My name is Steve Glaveski, and I'm the founder of Innovation Accelerator Collective Campus and the author of several books and numerous Harvard Business Review articles on all things productivity and performance at work. My mission with this show is to help you unlock your potential to do more great work in far less time, whether you're working as part of a team or flying solo, and to set you up for a richer life. If you enjoy this show, please like, share, and/or subscribe. And if you'd like to learn more about my work and connect with me online, visit steveglaveski.com. And now, on with the show. Okay, so why am I playing the guitar? Poorly, I might add. Well, essentially to illustrate the fact that we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and playing the guitar is not one of my strengths, despite the fact that I was that kid with all the heavy metal t-shirts in school with the hair down to his waist. For whatever reason, I could, despite the many hours that I put into it, never get that good at it, as you could hear just there. I mean, that was probably not the best rendition of that song that I've done, but nonetheless, the skill set was not there. So if I pursued a life trying to make it as a musician, I probably, more likely than not, would not have been successful. And that brings me to today's topic. So welcome back to the Workflow Podcast. This is episode number 4 of season 1, which is all about the foundations of high performance, productivity, and effectiveness at work. And the final ingredient in the 4 foundations of purpose, incentives, passion, and strengths is strengths. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get right into it. You know, when we think about our strengths and playing to our strengths, it's pretty hard not to talk about Michael Jordan. I grew up in the early 90s, so I was really privy to that era of Michael Jordan, Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing, Larry Johnson, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, you name it. There's a lot of Johnsons and Larrys in that sentence, but nonetheless. And so Michael Jordan was clearly, and I think still is to this day, the greatest basketballer of all time. Now, you may disagree with that. You might want to throw Kobe Bryant's name into the ring. You might want to throw LeBron James's name into the ring, and that's completely fine. And perhaps I'm being biased because I did grow up in a particular era, but nonetheless, we will not turn this into an episode on the merits of these different basketballers and who is the greatest of all time. But the reason I bring up Michael Jordan is because he famously, after the tragic death of his father, James Jordan, by way of murder back in 1993, decided to hang up his basketball boots, so to speak, back in October of 1993. Now, that was the first time he retired, of course. And this was shortly after his Chicago Bulls closed out a three-peat. That is, they won 3 NBA championships in a row. One of which, the third, was against the Phoenix Suns, which is my team, a team that I've been supporting now for about 28 years. A long-suffering fan of, I might add, but they are actually this year, in 2021, at the time of recording, top of the league, which is a very unusual place for us to be in, and a very unusual feeling for me, I might add. But nonetheless, so Jordan, as we know, one of the greatest basketballers of all time, left basketball in October of 1993 to pursue baseball at the ripe old age of 31 years old. He signed a contract with the Chicago White Sox and then ended up playing a season with their minor league affiliate, the Birmingham Bruins. Now, Jordan's statistics were far from spectacular. His batting average was .202. The average in the leagues is about roughly between .250 and .275. So he was below average. He was far from a superstar. He did bat in 51 runs and stole 30 bases, for those of you who understand a little bit of the baseball lingo. And to be fair on Jordan, I mean, he was joining the sport in his early 30s. He spent his entire life pretty much playing basketball, and he was still competitive. Like, if he had started earlier, if he had more time, he probably could have been a superstar in the sport. But by this point, his strengths lay elsewhere. He was never going to become a superstar this late in his career. So after a season, he decided to return back to basketball. And guess what? He won another 3 championships with the Chicago Bulls. In fact, in his first full season back with the Bulls, he averaged 30.4 points per game, which was he led the league in points per game. And he wrapped up his career with 6 NBA titles, 6 most valuable player awards, 14 NBA All-Star appearances, and 2 Olympic gold medals, which he earned in 1984 and 1992 as part of that iconic Dream Team. Now, this is an example of somebody who achieved everything they could when playing to their strengths and had lackluster results when playing to what were essentially his weaknesses at the time, and that was baseball. So the question then becomes, how can you tap your inner Michael Jordan? How can you tap the inner NBA basketball MVP rather than pursuing the wrong craft, the wrong domain where you will never be a superstar? Sometimes we fall into certain professions because we had a conversation with a career counselor in, say, the 12th grade or year 12, and that kind of forced us to become accountants or lawyers, but we never really took the time to really understand our strengths, and maybe we've already invested 5, 10, 15 years in a particular profession, and we feel like the sunk cost is too great to change course, but maybe it's worth doing so because we could be far better somewhere else. Now, this is definitely not an excuse to forget about our weaknesses. It's a matter of doubling down on our strengths. Now, as Tom Rath, who wrote the book StrengthsBased Leadership, puts it, great leaders, great performers know their strengths. And he says that if you focus on people's weaknesses alone, they lose confidence. So we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses, but we have innate strengths that set us up for success. And the thing about working to your strengths is you're more likely to get results. And when you get results, that becomes motivating. So it creates this virtuous cycle where you keep putting energy into something, you keep getting results, and as a result of that, over a long period of time, you end up much further than what you would if you focused a disproportionate amount of time at work on things that you're just not that good at. And as Roth argues, we should spend about 75% of our self-improvement on strengths and only about 25% addressing weaknesses. And I would argue that when it comes to those weaknesses, address the weaknesses that you must address, that are preventing you from becoming who you want to be, from getting the results you want to get, rather than addressing weaknesses that perhaps you should just delegate to someone else, or weaknesses that perhaps aren't even worth addressing. So you can think of someone who perhaps is starting a business for the first time, working alone. There are so many hats that they can wear, marketing, sales, strategy, product design, product development, content creation, networking, you name it. But if your strengths lie in marketing, if you're like 10 times better at marketing than any one of these other domains, well, you really should be doubling down on the marketing side of things rather than you're splitting your time across all of these things, doing all of these things poorly, and that is ultimately going to affect your results. I mean, it's kind of like having two investment options in front of you. One is going to pay you a 10% ROI, the other is a 5% ROI. Now, providing these are guaranteed returns, you'd be a fool to split your money and diversify across the two because you're going to get twice the returns by putting all of your money into the 10% ROI option. So you could think of your investment of time, investment of energy into your strengths as the higher ROI investment option. And the same goes with people working in teams, people working in organizations. Typically nowadays, if I am a freelancer, if I am working on content creation, I'm going to jump on a platform like Fiverr. I'm going to find people to help me with the social media marketing side of things if that's not my strength. But I can also do that as part of a team at a large organization. With the workshops and webinars that I've run for large companies, oftentimes people are flabbergasted, if I can use that word, at just how easy it is to outsource and delegate simple rudimentary tasks to people outside of your organization. I mean, you can jump on a platform like Fiverr, which I'll have a link to in the show notes, where you can find people to help you with graphics and design, digital marketing, writing and translation, video and animation, music and audio, programming and technological support, data analysis. Like, there are so many things that perhaps you have to do in your job that you're not that good at, that you can outsource to someone, oftentimes for $10 an hour, depending on where that person is based, and they will do a good job. And it's been a big part of my strategy building my companies over the years to outsource the stuff that I am just no good at. So when it comes to leadership, StrengthsBased Leadership is a book you should definitely check out. I have a link in the show notes for you. But what Tom Roth says is the best way to lead is by understanding your unique strengths profile and developing yourself based on those strengths. And this actually echoes Richard Branson, one of the most successful entrepreneurs and leaders of the 20th and 21st century, who basically says that he surrounds himself with people that are smarter than him. He gives them a worthwhile mission. He gives them the tool, the resources they need to succeed, and he gets the hell out of the way. This essentially backs the research, or the research backs this, and the research on this topic suggests that well-rounded individuals tend to make mediocre leaders. And that makes a lot of sense, because what's the point of being well-rounded and just like everyone else? You want to be exceptional at something. And in order to be exceptional at something, you typically have one area that you excel in. This is as true for individuals as it is for companies. Companies who try to do everything, especially from day one, will typically do everything poorly. But companies that hone in on a very specific problem they're solving and double down on coming up with a spectacular solution in that space, they're going to be exceptional when it comes to that solution. They're not going to be great at anything else, but that's fine, because people want to invest. When it comes to solving that specific problem, they're going to come to this one company alone. Problems often arise when we try to be good at too many things, and the reality is life, I won't say life is short, but time is of the essence, and we can only invest so much time into becoming great at so many different things, particularly from day one. I mean, you can become good at one thing and then slowly move on to other things, and perhaps leverage that one thing to get better at other things faster. Like someone like a Joe Rogan, for example, who got good at comedy, was able to leverage that skill set and apply his ability to communicate by becoming a UFC commentator and becoming a podcaster as well. So you can leverage your existing strengths and apply them to different domains to get better at these other domains as well. Now, Gallup, the research company, put together a simple formula on strengths, which they call talent times investment. So we've got innate talents in certain areas, and the investment that we put into this talent is going to result in our strengths. Gallup also did some research on strengths alignment and people who work to their strengths every day. And they actually found that people are 6 times more likely to be engaged by work when they are strengths aligned. They also found that when we're using our strengths each day, we are up to 3 times more likely to report having an excellent quality of life and 15% less likely to quit our jobs. Now, this makes perfect sense because it ultimately comes back to living a more aligned life. When we're not living an aligned life, be it in our professional or our personal lives, every day can feel like we're rolling a boulder uphill. But when we're living an aligned life, we're flowing like water. We're rolling that boulder downhill. Things become incredibly easier. And when we're living in alignment with our strengths, we're getting results. We're being rewarded. We're motivated. We keep showing up. We keep getting results. And again, like I said earlier, it becomes a virtuous cycle. So, how do you go about determining your strengths? Because most people lack the self-awareness, and this isn't a criticism of people, it's just the way we are. Most people lack the self-awareness to really know what their strengths are. I have the self-awareness to know that my strengths are not in guitar playing. But how do you go about defining your strengths short of sitting there and racking your brain? Well, there are tools out there that you can check out. There is the Gallup Strengths Finder tool. It costs about $50, and that tool is available for both individuals and teams. And if you're looking for a free alternative, you can check out High Five Test. So the High Five Test, I believe it's at highfivetest.com. I'll have links to these in the show notes for you. I actually took the test and I scored a 5. So what does that mean? Well, according to the test, I am a philomath who likes to learn new things and stay curious, a self-believer who doesn't let uncertainty bother me, a strategist who sees the big picture, a deliverer who gets things done, and an optimist whose objective is to bring a positive spirit. Now, I think they apply to me, based on what I know about myself. Definitely staying curious, learning new things. That is totally me. A strategist, yeah, to some degree, I think so. But these hone in on some of my softer sort of skills and worldview. I think one thing I know about myself is that I tend to find the signal in the noise. So how can I get the most done with the least amount of time, which is essentially what I'm working on now. My book Time Rich was all about finding the signal in the noise. This podcast is all about finding the signal in the noise. And if I reflect on how I did work back in the corporate world, for example, when I was a management consultant working at a large firm, I found I could get my work done in much less time purely by focusing on the signal. What work did I absolutely need to do? Which people did I absolutely need to talk to communicate, to build relationships with? And as a result, I had something resembling normal work hours, whereas a lot of my colleagues had something resembling 14-hour-a-day shifts. So that is an innate skill of mine. And then outside of this, you want to reflect on what are your more technical skill sets, the marketing, the sales, the web development, whatever the case is, because you want to be investing your time accordingly. So this brings me to the end of this mini-series on the 4 ingredients of high performance: purpose, incentives, passion, and strengths. If you have all 4 of these, you are exponentially more likely to succeed and to perform well at what you do. I will publish an episode on values alignment, which I think is also very important. And from there, we'll be going into the foundations of physical performance, optimizing our bodies and our minds to get the best out of ourselves every single day. So before we wrap up, I wanted to leave you with a call to action about strengths. 1, identify your strengths and your weaknesses. 2, spend about 75% of your time improving your strengths and 25% on your must-improve weaknesses. 3, delegate what you're no good at, outsource it. use platforms like Fiverr if you must. There's a link in the show notes to that. Or if you have people in your team who you can delegate to who will benefit from that delegation and learn skills that can help them get ahead, do that instead. And finally, number 4, if you're currently not working in an area where you are strengths aligned, well, you really would benefit from finding work that aligns with your strengths or building a business in an area that aligns with or leverages your strengths. So with that, I'm going to bring this episode of Workflow to a close. As always, you can find the article that this episode was based on over at steveglaveski.com, along with hundreds of other articles, podcast episodes, free ebooks, and my online course, Time Rich. Until next time, peace out.